You know, there's a rivalry, right, between Oxford and Cambridge. So they love to compete with each other. In spite of the rivalry, Oxford and Cambridge universities, well, they've got a shared history, and they were both founded by the same people. They were religious scholars, priests really, and they used to study in France. So they would travel backwards and forwards from Paris doing their studies. But the king at the time said, you guys can't go to France anymore. You've got to relocate to somewhere in England. So they chose Oxford as their new place of study, and that's how Oxford University really got started. Yeah? Now they were quite successful there for a while, but then two of the students in Oxford, they got into a lot of trouble. They got accused of murder, and they were executed by the townsfolk. Yeah, I know, it got very scary. The rest of the scholars there, they didn't really think that these guys were guilty. And they didn't really feel safe after the execution, so they left town. And some of them came to Cambridge, and they started a new life again. And that was in 1209, and that's how Cambridge University really got started. So basically, it was founded by murderers from Oxford University. A shady past, right? So that was the beginning. A lot of people, when they visit Cambridge for the very first time, one of the first questions they ask is, so where is the Cambridge University? It's a good question. Did you ask that? But it's all over the city. You can't really get away from it, it's everywhere. There are 31 different colleges, and the colleges are spread all over the town. So even on the outskirts of town, you find colleges. The ones down here by the river, they tend to be the older colleges. When you get to the outskirts, they're often a little bit newer. Now, at the moment, we are in the grounds of Queen's College. Yeah, except we're going to come out of the grounds of Queen's College quite quickly. So I will tell you a bit more about it on the way back, if that's okay. But for now, I will tell you that it's a college and it was founded by a queen. Yeah, is that all right? Well, I'll give you the date as well. It was founded in 1448. It's quite an old one. But we're going to leave Queen's behind us for a while, and we will start to come into the grounds of King's College now. This one's called King's College. Now, King's College here was founded by King Henry VI. Henry VI, he was King of England during the Wars of the Roses. Have you guys heard of this, the Wars of the Roses? Yeah, it was a little bit like Game of Thrones. Yeah, minus the dragons. You guys, but you shouldn't be watching Game of Thrones. But yeah, Henry VI was caught up in all of this. So this battle over the throne between two families. And he lost the throne. In the end, he lost the war. He was captured by the enemy, and he lost his throne. So maybe he wasn't a very good king. He was quite a gentle guy, really. He liked to start schools. That was one of his favourite things. He founded a really famous school. It's called Eton College for Boys. You guys heard of Eton? Down near Windsor. Pretty famous. This college, King's, was only for Etonians at first. So Etonians are people that studied at Eton. So it was only for boys from Eton. Very exclusive to begin with, I guess. Now you guys from China, this is the King's Bridge, but you might call it the Kongqiao.
Oh, this is Kongqiao.
Yeah. So when Zhu Ximo describes the view with the Liao Xiu, the reeds and the rushes, it's the view from this bridge that he's describing in the poem.
Oh yeah.
Now I'm going to break the rules a little bit here, guys. I'm going to go right to the left. We're supposed to stay on the right, but I can't see any river cocks, so I'm going to go to the left. And we're going to get a better view of the chapel from over here. So if you look to my right-hand side, you're going to see the King's College Chapel come into view. And this is probably the most famous building here in the city. There it is, the chapel itself. So the chapel is the big edifice in the middle there. And it's one of the biggest chapels in the world. Chapels are usually quite small. This one's really, really big. People often say that they think it's a cathedral rather than a chapel, but it's not a cathedral. You've got to have a bishop to be a cathedral. There's no bishop in it. It's a very big chapel though. And we often get asked, well, what's the difference between a chapel and just a normal church? Does anyone know the difference? So a chapel is a church, but it's on private grounds. It belongs to something else. So if you see a church on the grounds of a college like this one, or it could be a hospital, or even like a casino in Vegas, right? They call it a chapel. So it's a church that belongs to something else. So that's what this is. Just happens to be a very big one. If you get the chance, you should try to go inside the chapel to have a look. When you go in there and you look above you, the ceiling, it kind of fans out above you. And it's the largest one of its kind. It's the biggest fan vaulted ceiling in the world. Sounds very impressive. I should say there's not that many in the world. They're all in England as well, but still, it's the biggest one in the world. You've got to dress things up a bit sometimes. Now, on my right, you'll see a big bay of stained glass here. Again, from the inside, these look really, really quite stunning. There's another bay like this on the other end. They go all the way down the sides too. Now, they are in very good condition for their age. Some of the best preserved Renaissance stained glass in the world. And they're so well looked after that during the Second World War, this college became very worried that bombing raids would damage the glass. So they took every single piece out of the chapel. They removed it all. They stored it till the war was over, and then they put it all back in again. It's a big job. Some people said that it took a bit longer to put back in than it should have done, because they hadn't taken a good note of where they'd taken each piece from. So it was like a big IKEA kit with no instructions. Yeah, very scary. They managed it in the end. So we're coming into the grounds of Clare College now. This one's called Clare College, and this is the oldest college on the river, and it's the second oldest of all of them. So the real oldest, or the very oldest one, is called Peterhouse, and that was founded in 1284. This one came next. Although this college had a different name to begin with, up until 1338, it was called University Hall. But they nearly ran out of money. It nearly went bankrupt. So this college had to be saved. Yeah, it was saved from bankruptcy by a French princess. And her name was Elizabeth de Clare. So that's where the name comes from. She renamed it after herself. Which I think is fair enough, isn't it? If you save the place, you can rename it. That's what she did. I mean, being a princess, she could afford to help out. She was very, very wealthy. She was the granddaughter of Edward I, Edward Longshanks, the baddie in Braveheart. Most people remember him. She was also really good at marrying very rich old men who would almost immediately die. I know, right? She'd had 3 different husbands by the age of 27 years old, each one dead within a year, and some of the richest men in Europe. She got all their money, but it made people really suspicious. Yeah, they started to accuse her of killing these poor guys to get their money. I mean, it wasn't fair. She wasn't really killing these guys, but it didn't stop people talking. Now we're coming into the grounds of Trinity Hall now, on my right-hand side. This is Trinity Hall. Pretty narrow one to look at from the river here, but it's very old, founded in 1350. And this one is where Stephen Hawking did his master's degree. Yeah. So Stephen Hawking began postgraduate studies at this college. He had been an undergrad at Oxford. Yeah, I don't know what he was doing. Came to his senses. Squeaky brakes. Now we're coming into a very famous college, this one. This is called Trinity College. It's one of the biggest colleges in the city, the most students, about 1,000 at this one. It's not quite the biggest anymore. It has been overtaken by Homerton. Homerton's the newest college, and they've got just a handful more students than these guys now. But this one is very famous, very successful, and it was founded by King Henry VIII. You guys heard of Henry VIII? One with the 6 wives? Yeah, that's what most people know about him. He did lots of other stuff as well. Like he founded the Anglican Church, that kind of thing. But most people just remember the wives, yeah? Now, this college was founded by Henry VIII in 1546. It was right at the end of his life, right at the end of his reign. By the end of January in 1547, he was gone. So it was one of the last things he did, really, to found this college. Lots of very famous people have studied here over the years. Isaac Newton was a student here. Lord Byron studied here, famous romantic poet. Yeah, I guess the most famous one is probably Isaac Newton. Famously invented gravity, didn't he? It was very useful. Before that, we were all floating around.
Yeah.
And we're going to come under the Trinity Bridge now. 18th century, this one. So the college was well established by the time this particular bridge was built. So I'm not that tall, I have to be a bit careful. Now on my right, you're going to see the Wren Library start to come into view here on my right hand side. It's one of my favourite buildings on the river. It was designed and built in the 17th century, right at the end. In 1695 it was finished. And it was designed by Sir Christopher Wren. Now he was the architect of St Paul's Cathedral in London. Now inside the library there's a pretty impressive collection of books. They've got all the classics really. They've got the whole Hunger Games series, all the Twilights.
How many?
Not really. 75,000 books, but they're actually all very old. You won't find new books in there. They're actually, it's a historical collection. So they stopped collecting books in about the 1820s. So the whole collection really dates from before the early 19th century. There's a few exceptions. But really it's a library of very old, very rare books. So there's things like one of the first folio editions of the complete works of Shakespeare and Son. Yeah, they're very rare from the 17th century. They've also got a copy of Isaac Newton's Principia Mathematica. This is his most famous book, where he sets out all of his most famous theories. The version they hold, well, that's a signed copy by Newton himself. And in the margins, there's notes written in his own hand. So it's annotated by Isaac Newton. Very rare. So as we come under this lovely willow, we're going to come out of Trinity College and into the grounds of St John's.
I think I'll see you in about 4 years.
Now if you look to my left through the trees here, you'll start to see glimpses of the new court. Lots of people ask about this building. It looks a bit like a fairy tale castle, doesn't it? It's nothing really, it's just my house. Yeah. I've just had a hot tub here in the back. Crazy golf on the roof these days, it's pretty good. Believe it or not, it's actually student accommodation. Students live there.
For where?
Inside this building. Purpose-built student accommodation. So it was built in the 19th century. It looks kind of older than that. It's the style that is confusing. It's a neo-Gothic design. Yeah, neo-Gothic. So it's part of the Gothic revival that happened in the 19th century. So yeah, but it's beautiful, isn't it? It looks quite not bad for student digs, right?
What did you say? Oh my god!